Good evening, everyone. It's 6:30 p.m. and 6:31 p.m. and I'll declare this agenda briefing forum is now open. I'd like to invite Councillor Anderson to read the Acknowledgement of Country.
Nang Jerapun Wajak Nunga Bujak, Yankeni Nija Bilia Barok. I am honoured to be standing on Wajak Nunga country on the banks of the Swan River. Nang Kadich Nunga Mort, Ken Kadach Nija Wajak Nunga Bujak, Nang Kadich Nija Nunga Bilia Kora, Yaya Borda Belpeni Morich, Nunga Kadijan, Mort We Buja Yaya. I acknowledge the traditional custodians of this land and respect past, present and emerging leaders, their continuing cultural heritage, beliefs and relationship with the land, which continues to be important today. Nang Yaka Belpeni Nunga, Belia We Mort Nija Buja. I thank them for their contributions made to life in the town of Victoria Park and to this region.
Thank you, Councillor Anderson. Item number 4 on the agenda is announcements from the presiding member. 4.1 is the purpose of the agenda briefing forum, which is to provide an opportunity for elected members to ask questions and obtain information on officer reports in the draft ordinary council meeting. It is not a decision-making forum, nor is it open for debate. Members of the public that may be directly affected by an item on the agenda can make presentations, deputations, statements and ask questions prior to the matter being formally considered by council at the next ordinary council meeting, which in this case will be in 2 weeks' time. 4.2 is notice of recording and live streaming. All participation in this meeting will be audio recorded and live streamed on the town's website. The live stream will be archived and made available on the website after the meeting. 4.3, conduct of the meeting. All those in attendance are expected to extend due courtesy and respect to the meeting by refraining from making any adverse or defamatory remarks regarding council, the town staff or any elected member. No one shall create a disturbance at a meeting by interrupting or interfering with the proceedings through expressing approval or dissent, by conversing or by any other means. All questions and statements made by members of the public are not to personalise any elected member or member of town staff. Questions and statements are to be directed to the presiding member, who may choose to call upon an officer of the town or another elected member to assist with responses. 4.4 is public participation time. There is an opportunity to ask questions and make statements at the beginning and the end of the meeting. In relation to questions and statements at agenda briefing forums, they are limited to items that are on the agenda. The opportunity to ask questions and make statements at the end of the meeting is limited to those members of the public who did not participate in the public participation time at the beginning of the meeting. Public participation time will be held for a maximum of 30 minutes. Any additional time must be by agreement from the meeting, and it will be in 5-minute increments. As per my usual practice, there will be a limit of 3 questions per person and 2 minutes allocated to statements per person. But of course, if there are very few questions or very few statements, we can be more generous with those times. 4.5 is questions taken on notice, something that you sometimes hear said in our council meetings. Responses to any questions tonight that are taken on notice that relate to the agenda items will be presented in the officer's report for the ordinary council meeting agenda under the heading Further Consideration, and you find that heading Further Consideration at the end of the officer report. So, item 5 is attendance. We have all elected members in attendance. There are also a number of the town's executive, management and staff led by the CEO, Mr. Carl Askew. There are no apologies and no approved leave of absence. Item 6 is declarations of interest. Mr. CEO, do we have any declarations of interest, please?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. I have 2. Item 12.1, Councillor Biondi, of financial interest. I have a financial relationship with Urbanista, who is my employer. And item 13.2, Councillor Ingram, an impartiality interest. With regard to this matter, I disclose that I have engaged with members of the local community regarding their advocacy positions on this particular item. As a consequence, there may be a perception that my impartiality on the matter may be affected. I declare that I will consider this matter on its merits and vote accordingly.
Thank you, Mr. CEO. Are there any elected members who haven't yet made a declaration of interest but who need to do so? I'm going to make a declaration myself for 13.2, which is Rutland Avenue Advocacy and Project Update. It's an impartiality. I have had numerous communications with members of the community with regard to the Rutland Avenue project, and in particular the two-way option. I've also met with a number of people in the community and done advocacy on behalf of the town and council to members of Parliament with regards to the Rutland Avenue project. I will submit a written declaration of interest at the end of the meeting. Councillor Cruiser.
Item 13.2, Rutland Avenue. I have received extensive communications from people regarding different approaches to this option, to this item.
Thanks, Councillor Cruiser. Anyone else who needs to declare an interest? Councillor Cruiser, you have another interest to declare?
I think impartiality. As a member of the Mindera working group, I've been part of the discussions informing item 12.2.
All right, well, I'll take it that there are no other declarations of interest, but I do gently remind elected members as we're going through the agenda, if you do consider that you do have an interest that needs to be declared, you need to do that before we reach that item for discussion. Okay, item 7 is public participation time, which I'll now open at 6:38 p.m. So I have an indication already of some people who would like to participate. I'm going to call those people in the order they appear on my list. Because this is public participation time, there's no differentiation between asking questions and making statements. When you come up, you're welcome to make your statement, ask your questions, make your statement, whichever order suits you. And at the end of the names of the people on my list, I'll again ask the public gallery if there's anyone else who's not on my list who would still like to come forward and participate either by asking questions or making statements. So first on the list is Joe Clark. Please come forward. Just press the button on the microphone so we can hear you, and please state your name and suburb only. Thank you. We look forward to hearing from you.
Good evening. Thank you very much for the opportunity to ask some questions and make a statement with regards to item 12.4 on the agenda today. We noted the response from the council officers with regards to the delegation that was made last week, and we have some questions that we'd like to ask. So in reference to point 15 on page 47, which states, with respect, while the approved development may result in increased use in the section of Butler Lane between the development site and Boulder Street, this is expected not to be to an extent that is significant or results in adverse amenity or safety impact. So the question that we have related to that is, with regards to that item on item 1 on our agenda, which relates to signage, at what level would the traffic movement or volume be deemed significant enough for the council to act and install signage as requested in our petition? With regards to the points related to traffic monitoring prior to the opening...
Sorry, if you were going to move on to another question, was that what you're hoping to do? I'm just going to do them question by question, and that way you'll get to hear the answer and have time to consider whether there's something arising out of that you also want to need to ask about.
All right.
So I'm going to refer that question to our Chief Community Planner, Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Thanks for the question. I will take it on notice so our traffic engineer can provide, in the further considerations portion of the report coming up to an OCM, a threshold or a number that they would deem or consider where an intervention might be required. So we'll put that in the further considerations part of the report.
All right, thank you, Mr. Doy. So we'll take your question, Ms. Clark, on notice. So that means that there will be a written response and it will appear in the agenda for the coming council meeting. So as soon as that agenda is published, you'll see the written answer, and that itself might prompt some more questions for you once you see the written answers. But you'll then have time between when you see it and when the council meeting comes along to explore those matters further. Do you want to move to your second question?
Thank you, much appreciated. So the next question, question 2, is related to traffic monitoring prior to the opening of the centre. Can council advise how the recommended, it's termed manual traffic, count will be undertaken? So, for example, what time of day would it occur? Will it be in peak or off-peak? Will it be continuous? And over what period of time might that occur, please?
I'm going to go to Mr. Doy, but he might need to speak to the Chief Operations Officer because I think that technical part of it will be done by her team. Would that be right? Yep. Do you want me to go to the Chief Operations Officer first go? Yep. We'll go to Ms. Labicus.
So we are currently scoping and planning that, and we'll put further information in the agenda.
Thank you.
All right. So I'll formally take your question on notice for that so that you'll actually have some details to your questions about what times of day will the monitoring occur, etc. Rather than just leave it as it currently is to say we're working on the scope. So you'll get an answer to that. Do you have a third question?
I do. So the third question relates to the parking management plan. It's not off agenda as it relates to a new point made, which we value. So there's a new inclusion by council officers that relates to the statement, and it's at dot point 6. Discourage the use of the southeastern leg of Butler Lane, which is the new inclusion, in the parking management plan to be provided to council prior to opening. So the question related to that is, how does council intend to oversee compliance with a registered traffic management or parking management plan, for the childcare centre?
Refer that to Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Yeah, so there's a condition for all, or there's often conditions for all development approvals, and this is one, the provision of a parking management plan. So we will receive that and review that, and we have reviewed that. That will need to be enacted, and then we have a compliance team at the town. When I say team, a compliance person at the town whose job it is to enforce in compliance. So we often, sometimes they will take proactive compliance, which they'll go out and they will review, but often we rely on the neighbourhood, eyes on the street, to make sure that people are doing the right thing, and then our compliance officer will go out and assess. Yep.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Did you wish to make a statement as well?
I will.
Yep, all right.
Thank you. So with regards to the risk of excessive traffic on the residential portion of Butler Lane presented in our petition to council on the 18th of November, the traffic impact statement assumes that patrons will not use the residential section of Butler Lane to access or exit the childcare centre due to its narrow width. Since this assumption is stated in a document used for approving the centre's development, it seems reasonable for the council to reinforce that assumption by installing no entry signage from the outset. Failing to implement clear signage before the centre's opening risks unexpected traffic volumes that exceed the lane's capacity. While we acknowledge the recommended actions presented by the officers, we believe that waiting to install signage until after traffic monitoring, once traffic patterns are established, will likely face greater opposition from clients. To avoid confusion and resistance, signage should be in place prior to the centre's opening. Expectations should be transparent from the beginning, not introduced reactively. As the town of Victoria Park has delegated authority from main roads for signage, an authorised sign would provide credibility with the centre's management's communication to patrons on the required entry and exit directions for the centre. In addition, with authorised signage in place, expectations such as entry, exit and parking requirements could be made explicit in the centre's terms and conditions of use. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next on the list, Rose Cameroon. Can I just get you to pop the microphone on, thanks?
Voilà, d'accord.
spot on.
Okay, Rose Cameron from Lathlane. I'm here to ask some questions in relation to, some of you already would know this, Rutland Avenue, which is 13.2 on the agenda briefing forum. My first question relates to the presentation, the cost-benefit presentation. There was a table on the last page that refers to various criteria. For example, it was the pedestrian comfort and safety, cyclist connectivity, shade and amenity, traffic safety, etc. With each option, the original two-way, the one-way and the revised two-way, they were all given weighting and a score out of 5. I just was wondering, are these scores only relevant to the vehicles, cyclists and pedestrians that were using Rutland Avenue, or was the remainder of the Lathlane street users taken into account with this table?
Direct that question to the Chief Operations Officer.
I'll take that one on notice. Thank you.
All right, we'll have to take that one on notice. Next question.
I'm not sure if, I don't know if I can do it like this, I'm not sure how it works, but if the answer would be no, the other streets weren't taken into account, I do have another question. Shall I ask that just in case?
I think so, and you can just say it at the beginning of your question, saying if the other streets weren't taken into
okay, cool.
account, my question is, and if we have to take that on notice, then they'll fit together neatly, but we'll see how we go.
Perfect. Okay, if the answer is no. Would the town officers consider making amendments to the report to take into consideration the impacts on pedestrians and cyclists on the other streets of Lathlane when developing the community benefit analysis?
Ms Lebickers?
Yes, we're happy to take that into account.
So we will take that into account, so we don't need to take that bit on notice, so that's good.
Fab. Great. Okay, my next question is regarding to the agenda. It's point 4C, and it talks about on the 5th of November, the town CEO met with the Director General to continue discussions over advocacy and Rutland Avenue. I was just wondering, with the new revised two-way option, now at a similar costing to the one-way option, was advocacy for the two-new-way option spoken of at this meeting?
For that question to the CEO, Mr Askew.
Yes, it was. Yes.
Great. Am I allowed to ask you some more about that?
Well, we look like we have a fairly light on a public gallery tonight, so probably likely to say yes, but we do have someone else on the list and there might be a couple of other people in the gallery who do want to ask questions. So do you have another question about that?
Yeah, it's just also in relation to the advocacy. So yes, if that was discussed, would there be an option, because I know that the original two-way funding was quite excessive, with the new revised two-way option, did you get an indication that that could be something that could be promising forthcoming? I know that's
You're definitely putting the CEO on the spot.
I am, and I'm sorry.
I'm sure he can handle it, Mr CEO.
And thank you, Mayor, for the question. Yes, it was well received. There was, I think, fair enough to say it's still an ongoing advocacy piece for us, so there's no definite answer that I can give you in terms of that commitment, but we did provide them with that information. We indicated the design is not complete, so the costing isn't finalised at this point in time, but certainly they were keen to entertain it.
Oh, fabulous, thank you. Thank you, that's it.
All right, thank you. Next on the list, Amber Douglas.
Hello, my name's Amber Douglas. I live in Lathlane, and I'm just making a bit of a statement today about the same topic that Rose was just asking questions about. And I guess we didn't get an answer, but I really feel the report didn't really give community benefit analysis the acknowledgement it deserves for the third option. We saw during the one-way trial the impacts that other streets felt. And I know safe access to schools is a big priority for some of our councillors. And I know walking my children to school became quite a challenge during the one-way trial. Our walk times doubled with all the extra traffic and all the intersections that we had to cross. So I guess I'm just really keen to see a two-way option keep progressing, and it's really exciting to see that there's another option on the table that might be able to be progressed. And for some of our councillors that are new here now, I just want to let you know, during the one-way trial, Gallipoli Street in particular was impacted, and we saw an extra average of about 600 cars a day travelling on that street. And that street's also listed and acknowledged as a safe pedestrian cycling transport route for kids to walk to school. And on one occasion we saw an extra 1,000 cars a day. So it was quite significant. So yeah, thank you for progressing on this matter.
All right, thank you. Now, that's the people who are on the list. Is there anyone else in the public gallery who wanted to participate by asking any questions or making a statement? You're very welcome to come forward if you do. We don't want to put you under any pressure. We understand it's hard sometimes to be in the hot seat. But if no one else has any questions, then that's fine. I will officially close public participation time at 6:53 p.m. Thank you to those people in the public gallery who've come to let us know their thoughts and ask questions. And as I said, any questions that were taken on notice, you will get to see written answers to your questions in the agenda for the ordinary council meeting, which, funnily enough, will be coming out before we know it. So, moving on to item 8 on our agenda is presentations. There are none. Item 9 is deputations. There are none. Item 10, method of dealing with agenda business. So, reminder for elected members, this is where we identify only the items in the agenda for which questions will be asked from you tonight. So, I'm going to read through the item numbers. Please listen carefully, because if there are item numbers that you wish to ask questions about that are not on my list, you need to let me know. And equally, if you have asked questions already and submitted them in advance about any of these item numbers, and you've received your answers and you no longer wish to ask them in the meeting, please let me know, and then we'll determine if there's anyone else waiting to ask questions about those items as to whether they stay or they come off the list. So, questions have been received from elected members and will be following this order. 11.2, 2025 policy review. 11.3, the Rumble Skateboard Olympic Pro Tour 2026 partnership proposal and funding. 12.1, adoption of revised local planning policy 31, unhosted short-term rental accommodation and residential buildings. 12.2, extension of the Innovate Reconciliation Action Plan. 12.3, Hubert Street, outline of engagement outcomes. 12.4, response to petition relating to traffic impact of approved childcare premises at number 184A Shepperton Road, East Victoria Park. 13.1, feasibility report to resurface the Kensington Bushland pathways. 13.2, Rutland Avenue advocacy and project update, December 2025. 14.2, statement of accounts, October 2025. So, firstly, are there any item numbers in the agenda that elected members are wishing to ask questions about that are not currently on that list? I'll take that as a no. Are there any item numbers that I have read out for which you've already submitted questions and you no longer wish to pursue your questions tonight? Councillor Minson?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. If it's my question on 14.2, statement of accounts, the query about the attachments, that's answered and doesn't need to be listed. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Councillor Minson. Was there anyone else who wanted to ask questions on 14.2? No? If there's no one who wants to ask questions on 14.2, it's coming off the list. Councillor Ingram?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. I asked questions regarding 12.2. I believe that the answers provided, which will be included in the further considerations, will hopefully deal with that. So I'm happy to take that off.
All right, thank you. Is there any other elected member who's wishing to ask questions about item 12.2? That's the extension of the Innovate Reconciliation Action Plan. Not seeing any indication, so we'll take that from the list. I'll take 12.2 off the list, like so. Any other items that elected members no longer wish to pursue? Nope, so we're going to go with the ones that we have left. So we're going to start at the beginning of the agenda. So we're going to go currently to item 11.2, which is the 2025 policy review, which relates to policy 203, which is the stormwater runoff containment policy. So, Councillor Biondi, I understand you had some questions about this. Did you wish to ask those questions now?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Vernon. So through the chair, with respect to policy 203, stormwater runoff containment, has this draft policy been advertised for community consultation? If it has not, could I clarify the reason for this?
Yes, certainly. So direct that question to the Chief Operations Officer, Ms. Lubicus.
Thank you, Mayor. The amendments to the policy have not been advertised currently. The officer's assessment was that the changes weren't significant enough to warrant external advertising.
Another question, Councillor Biondi?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Vernon. I also note the officer's report notes internal engagement on page 14. So in connection with my previous question, could I just get some clarity around what the stakeholder comments section of that table means in the internal engagement table on that page?
Ms. Lubicus?
So the relevant business units that were engaged were the urban planning area, assets, place planning and street improvement. And I guess what we were trying to achieve through that engagement is to make sure that there was clarity between planning policies and this policy and understanding where it fits in the landscape.
Anything further, Councillor Biondi?
Yes, just one final question if I could. So in the actual policy itself, through the chair, there was EN5 that was struck out, which was providing facilities that are well built and well maintained. Is there a possibility of keeping this in the policy at all?
Ms. Lubicus?
Yes, we're happy to pop that back in.
That's everything?
That's everything. Thanks, Mayor Vernon.
All right, thank you. I have also submitted a couple of questions, but have yet to receive any responses, so I'll just ask those questions now. Does the town have a language style guide, particularly in relation to writing of policies, Ms. Lubicus?
Yes, it does.
Thank you. Second question, is it possible to get some consistency of grammatical expression in this policy? For example, the use of the word town, not council, and the word town with an apostrophe S, not towns without an apostrophe, so that it's grammatically correct throughout the document. Ms. Lubicus?
Yes, we will do a grammatical review.
Thank you. Final question. Clause 2 of the policy refers to exceptional circumstances, and I note those words are written in italics in the policy. The use of italics suggests this is somehow a defined term or a policy threshold, yet there isn't any definition of that expression. Can the town consider providing some guidance about what may constitute exceptional circumstances so that the public, proponents and the town's own decision makers have some clarity about what will meet this threshold? Ms. Lubicus?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, following your feedback on this, we have taken a look and agree that we need to provide some further examples around what exceptional may be. So if there's 100% coverage, all those sorts of elements, then we're happy to review it and put it in.
All right, so perhaps what I might do is take my question for that on notice so that something can appear in the further consideration of the report, and if it's a recommendation for changes to the policy, then we can all have a look at that. All right, thank you. Appreciate that. Are there any final questions from anyone with relation to this particular item 11.2? Councillor Ingram.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Through the chair, I just wanted to clarify something regarding point 1 of the commercial industrial mixed use development. So there is something in that statement where duration and peak flow calculations must be provided by an experienced and qualified stormwater hydraulic engineer. Does the town have the authority to reach in and basically control the experience level of someone who may be contracted to review that, or is that reaching beyond our remit?
Ms. Lebicus?
I'm going to take that one on notice. I think the intent there was more to ensure that there was credible information that was provided, but certainly I'll take on notice whether we can specify an experience level and those sorts of things.
Right, so we'll take that on notice. Councillor Ingram, was there anything further? All right, thank you. We'll move on to 11.3. The Rumble Skateboard Olympic Pro Tour 2026 Partnership Proposal and Funding. So in relation to this one, a number of questions have been sent through. I'm going to go to you, Councillor Cruiser, because I think your questions came through first.
Could we please get some more details about the Rumble's approach to gender equity and inclusion through this planned event?
Now, I think we're lucky enough to have Ms. Ellis with us, the Manager of Stakeholder Relations, so I'm going to direct these questions to her.
Through the chair, so the Rumble is committed to advocate for gender equity. We found this to be evidenced in their distribution of equal prize money at the pro level for both men and women's divisions. They also noted when I spoke to them this morning that skateboarding as a sport has a strong sense of community, which they support.
Anything further, Councillor Cruiser?
Is there scope within a potential partnership with the Rumble to actively work to improve gender equity or to support gender equity through that partnership process?
Ms. Ellis?
Thank you. Through the chair. So I spoke to them this morning surrounding this question, and they have confirmed that in development of the event and agreement terms, we can ensure that inclusion of gender equity is in the event delivery approach. They have confirmed that any particular messages or campaigns that council would like to see amplified through the Rumble, they will work with administration to make sure that they can assist and support.
Anything further, Councillor Cruiser? No? All right. Are there any other questions in relation to this item? So I've submitted a number of questions to this item, so I'll go through those. First question is, I noted that there isn't any information in the officer's report about any of the businesses or organisations involved in the event or the partnership, and since it is proposed that the town will partner with Pacific Action Sports to host the event, can the town please provide some information about Pacific Action Sports and their relationship with the BMD Rumble Pro Tour, and what, if any, role Skate Australia will play in this event? Ms. Ellis?
Thank you, Mayor. Through the chair. So the Pacific Action Sport is based in Brisbane and is the only sanctioned skateboarding league in Australia. The organisation caters from grassroots, professional and Olympic level competitions. They do 2 skateboarding leagues per year, which are delivered annually, and one of them is the Rumble AM series, and the other one is the BMD Rumble Pro Tour, which is what the town is looking to partner on. Pacific Action Sports is a PTY Ltd company that is responsible for the planning and delivery of the Rumble Tour series. I got confirmation from them this morning in regards to their relationship with Skateboarding Australia. They have signed a formal agreement with Skateboarding Australia a few weeks ago, prior to writing this report, for the Rumble to serve as the official Olympic pathway program for the next year. I'm just going to read a really quick excerpt from the formal letter received from Skateboarding Australia when I asked them this morning. In the email I submitted via governance, the key areas highlighted. So it says, this series will be directly linked to the World Skate qualifiers, ultimately feeding Olympic selection, and marks an important milestone in the evolution as an Olympic sport. It will underpin talent identification, competition preparation, athlete development and selection processes on the runway for Brisbane 2032. Fundamentally, this means it is from 2026 that the Rumble Series events will be a direct pathway to future Olympic selection. Skate Australia has been very involved in from a high performance perspective, bringing this their personnel, coaches and athletes, as well as procedural frameworks related to integrity, accredited officials, equity and inclusion. This is a positive and exciting development.
Thank you. My next question. The report recommends that funding be in the 2026-27 budget, which, as we know, has yet to be developed. And attachment 11.3.1 at page 15 states that the first event would ideally be March 2026, and that's the Pacific Action Sports' own proposal brochure, or alternatively October 2026. So I'm assuming the town is proposing the event be held in October 2026. Does this change from the ideal date of March have an impact on the event in terms of its timing, other tour events from elsewhere and the like? Ms Ellis?
Thank you, Mayor, through the Chair. So the town has met with organisers in the first instance and confirmed that that we cannot achieve a March 2026 event delivery. That would be impossible. But we are able to achieve a later in 2026 period. So at the moment, they are suggesting in October 2026, which suits their schedule and fits into their announcement and competition across the country. However, it could extend. So I'm looking at weather dependency. It could be between October and December of 2026.
All right, thank you. My next question is, what impact will granting this sponsorship in the 2026-27 financial year have on the annual sponsorship budget for that year in relation to both the total amount that will be available, but also other sponsorships that the town has planned or is pursuing, such as the pool, theatrical production at the Aqualife planned currently for late 2026 and therefore likely to be in that budget too. Ms Ellis?
Thank you, Mayor, through the Chair. So the town sponsorship budget, we've over the last few years have been shifting from having an annual allocation, which we used to do call-outs for, to moving to longer term and higher value partnerships with large delivery partners for either events or arts. So in the next financial year for 2026, we still have some long-term, so we're going into the final years of some longer-term partnerships. They include Santa's Symphony, which is $50,000. It's the last year of those agreement terms. Rotary is currently 100% in kind. We do the markets weekly. That is in kind and there's no material costs. Burswood Cinemas moves into its last year of agreement at $20,000. The Black Swan Theatre is at $70,000. And the Rumble would be at $40,000. That would be a total budget of $180,000. We expect a revenue from the pool of $70,000, as that will be a ticketed costed event, and the total cost for sponsorship events and partnerships in the 26-27 financial year will be $110,000.
All right, thank you. So I think when I had sent my questions through earlier today about what impact that might have, one of the part of the answer that came back indicated that the sponsorship budget would be increasing for the 26-27 financial year. However, you'd anticipate this could be offset with a reduction in town managed and delivered events. Is that part of your answer that was sent through today still the case? Is that still intended it would be offset with a reduction in our own managed and delivered events, Ms Ellis?
Through the Chair, yes, that is our intention. Previous meetings and part of the looking at bringing this event on board is looking at using partnerships to reduce the burden of delivering events ourselves as a town. For example, delivering an event like the Rumble would cost well over $100,000 for the town to do it itself. So it's looking at using these partnership events as a basis to then deliver our event strategy, which is due back in March of next year, to then build on that to see what resourcing the town puts behind town managed events.
Thank you. So just so I can be clear about this, the suggestion that there would be a reduction in town managed and delivered events does that indicate that the town would be looking at reducing our own events plan, i.e., to put it bluntly, taking something out in order to be able to do this in the sponsorship way? And if so, what would we be likely to lose? Ms. Ellis?
Thank you, Mayor. I need to take that on notice.
All right, if we could take that on notice, and I do understand we haven't yet begun all of our deep dive budget preparation as yet, but I think it's an important thing for us to try to understand. My next question relates to paragraph 9B of the officer's report. There is a reference there to a potential 4-year extension beyond the first 1-year sponsorship, and my question is, would the cost for that 4-year extension be then based on the 5-year option of the $150,000 set out in the proponent's brochure at 11.3.1 as to what a 5-year sponsorship deal would look like? Ms. Ellis?
Thank you, Mayor, through the Chair. So in all negotiations and all discussions with potential partners now, we always look at long-term options with any of those partners because we see building a longer-term relationship as being most beneficial to the town. However, we like to start those relationships with a 1-year pilot, and that is what I explained to Pacific Action Sports when I met them in the first instance. So in this case, we've agreed that a 1-year pilot for the $40,000 would be most appropriate. And then from there, they have at the moment an expected cost of the additional option to be a total package cost of $150,000. However, I must note that after the pilot, we would then go into negotiations if it worked out, and those future costs would be brought back to council.
All right, thank you. Paragraph 9C, what is the town's estimate of the value of the in-kind support that is suggested there will be provided by the town? Ms. Ellis?
Thank you, Mayor. Through the Chair. So the draft agreement has been developed with a value of in-kind support at $5,420. This includes waste support, extension to bathroom cleaning, opening hours with supported cleaning, venue hire, facility cleaning and checks, additional mowing near the venue and cleaning of the facility, and environmental health support.
Thank you. Just to pick up on something that you referred to there with regards to the bathrooms, noting that we've just got a relatively new public ablutions facility that's modular on site, but I think from memory only has maybe 3 or 4 toilets at it, and then a very old toilet block further down the way that again has 2 to 3 toilets for each side in it. Would the in-kind support extend to us having to actually hire additional toilets for a event of this size? Ms. Ellis?
Thank you, Mayor. Through the Chair, no, they would still be supplying all the portaloos as part of their agreement. However, that overflow would still expand to our public facilities.
Thank you. My next question relates to the second sentence in the officer report. There's a reference to other organisations the town has met with. What other organisations has the town met with, and what other similar or different opportunities have been identified to showcase the McCallum Park Active Zone in 2026 and beyond? Has the town called for expressions of interest to assess the competition in the market for the use of this space next year, including for events that only require in-kind sponsorship? Ms. Ellis.
Thank you, Mayor. There's a couple of questions there, so I'll ask them in spaced out. So just to explain where this originally came from, and how we've related this back to our sponsorship policy. So at the moment at the town, within our sponsorship policy, a sponsorship arrangement can come from 2 ways. It can come from an active sponsorship where the town approaches an organisation to sponsor one of our activities, events or facilities. The CEO is also authorised when it's considered appropriate for us to approach an organisation with an offer to sponsor activities. So that's parts of the policy at which this was presented. This particular partnership came about when we were seeking skateboarding organisations to support us in the development of the Rhythm and Ramps opening event. During that process, administration met with and engaged with skateboarding event providers. Pacific Sports were too large for that particular event, but very excited to partner with the town and very excited about the new venue. And we're seeking to build a long-term partnership for an Olympic-level skateboarding event in Perth. Having the views of Perth was also seen as beneficial. When we had meetings with them, we realised that there was potential for a long-term partnership. There was no formal EOI period, which is in line with our sponsorship policy.
Thank you. My final question is, what, if any, opportunities is the town exploring to align any of the town's own potential events to this particular event, should it proceed in either the March or the October 2026, such as the Youth Festival with South Perth, or, to pick up Councillor Cruz's point, any particular events we might be doing around gender inclusion that could be held at the same time and make use of this event as well? Ms Ellis?
Thank you, Mayor, and through the Chair. So in the pilot first year, we would aim to explore as many options for expansions as possible. That's really the point of having a pilot. We get to try everything that we possibly can. We have a highly engaged youth leadership team who are very excited about the event, as well as our community development team. However, the growth of the event would be more likely in the long term once that partnership's been established.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions from elected members about this item? No? All right, thank you. We will move on then. Item 12.1 is adoption of revised local planning policy 31. Councillor Biondi, you've declared a financial interest. If I could ask you to please leave the council chamber. You can go down the corridor into the function room and close the door. Thank you. We have a buzzer that buzzes through the corridors. You will hear it, and that will be your cue to come back. All right, so this item is 12.1, adoption of revised local planning policy 31, unhosted short-term rental accommodation and residential buildings. Councillor Andra Biondi's declared a financial interest in this matter, and I can confirm she's now left the chamber. So we do have some questions for this one. I'm going to go to you, Councillor Cruiser, first.
So, could we please get some more information about how the limits on the number of days particular premises can be rented out for are enforced by the town?
Direct that question to Chief Community Planner, Mr. Doy.
First of all, the limits are enforced by the nature of the approval that's provided, but as well, STRA, and I'll say STRA, which is short-term rental accommodation, premises are required to be registered through the state government STRA register. In the first instance, all bookings are recorded. Town's officers can view details for a premises on the register, including individual bookings and the total number of bookings for each property used for short-term rental accommodation. Additionally, the town receives email alerts via the STRA register when a premises registered for no more than 90 days is approaching or is exceeding its 90-day limit.
And
Councillor Cruiser.
are STRAs within the town assessed at residential rates or commercial rates?
Is that actually a question for the acting Chief Financial Officer or Mr. Doy? We need to share it around, don't we? Mr. Pryor.
They come under residential.
Councillor Cruiser, anything further?
Are all STRAs assessed at residential rates within the town?
Mr. Pryor? That's all right.
unfortunately, I'll need to take that part on notice. I feel like there's something there, so I don't want to commit to what I've got here.
All right, well, we'll take that question on notice. I think that's probably safer than trying to get some kind of collaboration going at the moment for an answer to that. So we'll take that on notice. Anything further? All right, thank you. Deputy Mayor Miles, you had some questions about this item.
I'm happy with the answers I received via email. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other questions from elected members about this policy? Councillor Ingram.
Thank you, thank you, Mayor Vernon. Through the chair, I just wanted to ask something in relation to the delegation aspect. So, in relation to approvals for unhosted STRAs, in the CEO's opinion, is there a clear enough demonstrated past approval process that can be reviewed and disclosed to council to ensure alignment and the manner in which the current policy has been implemented that would then allow council to rely upon this past performance if this delegation is then made?
Councillor Ingram, I might just get you to read it again, go a little slower. And before I know that your question is directed to the CEO, but it is my role to determine who should answer it. And the CEO does have the luxury of asking me to have one of his staff answer it. It is likely that Mr. Doy, as one of the executive C-suite team, is best placed to answer it on behalf of the CEO. But if you could just read it out again, we'd be grateful.
Totally okay. I can paraphrase it somewhat. So in relation to the approvals for the unhosted STRAs, is it the opinion of the town and town staff that there has been a clear enough demonstrated past approval process that could be reviewed and then disclosed to council so that council can be confident in the delegation that is being requested?
All right, I'm going to go to Mr. Doy. And
Yeah,
if this is something you need to take on notice,
I
then
think it's
let's
safer to
do
take that one on notice, Mayor Vernon.
We will take that on notice, Councillor Ingram, and that will mean that the answer to it more fulsomely comes in the agenda under the further considerations. Do you have any further questions on this item?
No, not this time, thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions on this item? Councillor Gordon-Manley.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Does the staff know how many Airbnbs or STRAs are owned and managed by commercial short-term rental providers versus owner-managed? And is that assessed in any development applications?
I am going to refer that question to the Chief Community Planner, but I think we've had over the years some questions about this because there was a time when this was all completely unregulated. And if you just do a Google search on Airbnb, you usually find that there are literally, well, it looks like there are hundreds or thousands of Airbnbs in Victoria Park's area. I'm sure they're not quite right, but there's now a registration process. So I think we've got some figures that are official and possibly some that we don't know about. Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. So there are, and thanks for the question, there are now 193 registered properties, but as to your question as to how many of those are potentially commercial entities behind that registration, Mayor Vernon, I'm going to pass to Chief Financial Officer who's done some research today.
Mr. Pryor?
I was going to confirm that the 193 is a total. I don't know what the distribution is of that, though. That's the only bit that we'll need to still take on notice.
I think what I'm going to do is take it on notice, but if I can just say this, if the town can actually look at the very recent approvals that we've granted, everything that's come to council so far by way of a retrospective approval for something that is unhosted short-term accommodation, when the applications come to us, we actually get to see both the landowner and the name of who's managing it and who may have submitted the application on behalf of the landowner. So that generally indicates they are the manager of the premises for the purposes of the short-term rental accommodation, suggesting it's not being run directly by the owner of the property. It's being run by someone on their behalf who would presumably be a commercial entity. So I guess you've got a variety of nuances in how that works, and we might have some intelligence on that, but we might not have it. It might not necessarily be fulsome or robust. But if we could think about that, what we do know from the applications that have both come to council and have come in and are awaiting coming to council as well. So we'll take that on notice. Thanks. Anything further?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon.
That's all right. You're very welcome. Any other questions finally about this item? Councillor Minson.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. A question on the Area 7, the Curtin University section, which is between Jarrah Road and Etwell Street, Hillview and Kent. That area is there to, I guess, service Curtin University as the justification. In the previous local planning policy, I think it was a requirement to for the management plan to show how they would confirm that there would be students staying at the Airbnb. It was in one of the recent applications they said they would provide university or student cards before they'd let anyone rent out. So is it my understanding correct that this new policy won't have any requirement for the person owning the STRA looking for the DA to actually confirm that it is going to be used as a student accommodation?
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Thanks for the question as well. There is still, under the provisions of the new policy, the requirement in this area, as there are for all identified areas, to have a management plan. In terms of the detail within the management plan and how it relates to confirming whether the users are students or not, I'll take that on notice.
All right, we'll take that on notice. Anything further, Councillor Minson?
Thank you. Yeah, further to that Area 7, is it, my understanding is that it is just the location of that area being adjacent to, I guess, Technology Park, adjacent to Curtin University, as the reason that that area is proposed to be included within possible STRA DA approval zone?
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Thanks for the question. Yeah, the location requirements of the updated policy talks about confining proximity of unhosted STRAs to activity centres, of which Curtin Bentley, which includes Bentley Tech Park, but also Curtin University is. It's a specialised activity centre, which is why that area has been identified.
Thank you. Just following on that, is it, I guess then the assumption that it is, we expect students that say are studying at the university to be looking for short-term rentals, and that's why we'd like to provide that location there as possible.
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. No, not necessarily. It's not targeted at students. It could be for travelling professionals coming to Curtin University. You want to be in close proximity. There's not necessarily a lot of accommodation or choice of accommodation through that area. It may also be travelling professionals coming to Bentley Technology Park that want to be in close proximity. Yep.
Thank you. Just got some questions on the numbers. So we've got the 193 STRAs, part of the registration list through the state government. Do we have the numbers that have so far submitted development applications? So I guess submitted and also approved or refused?
Mr. Doy?
Well, we have 193 registered within the town. Of those that have been refused, it's only 2, which were the 2 that made their way to council 3 months ago.
And is my understanding correct that out of the 193 STRAs that are registered, you only need to be registered if you are proposing to do unhosted for longer than 90 days, or hosted, or is it 193 regardless of how you're operating, and therefore need a DA? So all those 193 do need to get a DA, or are some of those hosted and unhosted for less than 90 days?
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. If I understand that question correctly, and I'll give it my best shot to answer, the 193 that are registered are required to because they are unhosted STRAs beyond 90 days. So not under 90 days, but beyond 90 days. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. My other question, is it possible for the town within this policy to have a limit, a time limit on the DAs given? Do they have to be permanent, or can we say have a long-term time limit on the DA for them to resubmit later?
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. So yeah, obviously the defining feature of the policy, of the new policy, is to provide, in the first instance, a 12-month temporary approval to see how it goes. But then, yeah, after that, it's still open to the town to provide a further time limit on the DA. So, and that will depend on how things go and our assessment of that 12-month period. So it could be a subsequent approval for a 2-year period or a 5-year period. It will depend. It is open to the town to provide that.
But it would be appropriate if council was of the mind to put a maximum limit, so 5, 10 years, something like that, on the DA that it's applicable for, that it would be within this policy available to council to say these DAs after the 12-month period are then valid only for a maximum of, say, X years.
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I believe so, but because of the nature of that question, I'm going to take that on notice just to confirm. Yep.
We'll take that question on notice. Thanks, Councillor Minson. Anything further?
Just a final question. Is it possible to get a breakdown of the locations of the straws in reference to the 7 proposed areas?
You mean like a map? Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Just seeking confirmation. Do you mean the existing registered straws within those locations? So identifying where they are within those existing locations?
To see if there's those locations, there's popular ones or non-popular ones, yeah.
I'll take that on notice just to see whether we have the capacity to do that within the time. Yep.
All right, we'll take that one on notice. Anything further, Councillor Minson? No, that's it. All right, are there any other questions about this policy? I'll go to Deputy Mayor Miles first and then Councillor Melrosa.
Would it be possible to clarify, because it is my recollection that we've had 4 applications come to council that we've refused, whether the correct number of refused is 4 or if it's 2, please.
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I'll clarify because I'm referring to the 2 of which I was sitting in the chair as Chief Community Planner, and there may be more, so I'll confirm. Yep.
All right, so we'll take that on notice. Anything further?
And I was just wondering, so from when a applicant applies, how long would it take at the moment for that to come to council? Like, could there be a bunch that are pending or not?
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Well, the intention under the delegations is they wouldn't come to council.
Sorry, I mean, at the moment, would there be any that were pending, or is everything that has been applied for kind of gone through council and we have nothing pending at the moment?
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I'm actually not sure. I'll take that on notice and find out.
We'll take that on notice. Councillor Melrosa?
In the submissions table, there's a section, location policy requirements. I guess it's a summary of the things people have said. It talks about the unnecessary pressures and / density on the preferred zones, which is making me think this is about, I guess, what could happen if we section off areas and have that just for STRA. Has the town considered what impact that sectioning off of areas of STRA would have on things like property prices or the social fabric of the people that would live in those areas, given that if all the houses were to all of a sudden at some point become STRA, what would that mean for those areas?
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Thanks for the question. It's a really good one. I guess while there is a growth in STRA within the town of Victoria Park, I guess we consider that the growth rate is not so high that we're seeing a significant risk that is going to undermine the fabric, or, for lack of a better way of describing it, clog the area. But it is a consideration, and it will need to be something that we continually review. We should never set and forget policies, and that will actually be a key consideration in the ongoing review of this policy.
Okay. Would then the review of this policy be made easier if the policy had within it a safe percentage, not saying what I think that could be because I have no idea, but what safe percentage of amount of STRA would be in a particular area, because obviously there would be a threshold somewhere where it's going to change those dynamics that I'm referring to.
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I understand the point. I guess the challenge with that is determining what a threshold would be and what level of backing that threshold would have. The concern it would end up being an arbitrary number that we would use without any level of evidence. I think our preferred approach is to monitor the policy and monitor the impact, and then make changes.
If it was to get out of hand, how would we wind back approvals on STRA? Obviously, we would not approve any more, but if there was too many, how could we take that back?
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. That's a fair question. I guess that's where we need to think about time-limited approvals as well, and the 12-month temporary approval is of use.
Councillor Melrose, anything further? Are there any other questions about this policy? I do have a couple of questions. Might go backwards with my questions to that last point. Mr. Doy, given that I understand what is set out in the table about location policy requirements, it indicates that the state government's planning exemption introduced last year, all property owners are now afforded the right to use their property as short-term rental accommodation without planning approval, being hosted all year round and unhosted up to 90 days within a 12-month period. So in terms of the legislation that was introduced, and I don't purport to have read through it all, does that actually even permit the town to actually say to people, because of this legislation, actually we've got a safe level threshold that we're able to stop people having more approvals because we don't want any higher percentage of such accommodation options within the town? Do we even know if it's legally possible at this time to restrict it by policy, Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. So the exemption is for people that are doing an unhosted STRA for up to 90 days, once within a 12-month period. 90 days within a 12-month period. So in those instances, no, we don't. They are exempt. But for unhosted STRA beyond 90 days, yes, we do have the ability to. They need to be registered, and we do have the ability to provide a development approval.
So, but following on from that, if we've got the capacity to give them development approval beyond the 90-day exemption period, do we then have the legal power to go further and do what Councillor Melrose is referring to, which is by the legislative instrument of the local planning policy, actually set a percentage of such approvals we'll grant and in certain areas over which we will not go, in a way of guiding future councils about how much of this we want to see in the town? Or is that actually not even legally possible for us to do, Mr. Doy?
I don't know about the legalities, and we could take that portion on notice, but it's not a road that we've thought about going down. I guess my inclination to that was not to go down that path because a number is terribly difficult to administer.
All right, thank you. I have hopefully two other questions. The first one relates to paragraph 2 of the officer's report. Paragraph 3. I am wondering if it is possible if the town could consider revising the second sentence of paragraph 3 so that it doesn't read that of the total 16,349 residential properties in the town, short-term rental accommodation currently equates to 1.2% of the total housing stock in an unqualified way. It is my understanding that your sentence there, the 1.2%, refers to those that are registered properties. So, in other words, could the town consider changing that sentence to say, meaning that registered short-term rental accommodation currently equates to 1.2% of total housing stock? Because there's clearly unregistered short-term rental accommodation out there.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. The town has considered it right then, and we will make that change.
Thank you. The next one was in relation to the schedule of submissions. I noted that there was a person who referred to the location geographic limitation, and they asked specifically if it could be changed in relation to Washington and Berwick Street. So this is submitter number 15, who opposed the policy and said property owners should not have arbitrary restrictions applied by local councils. The boundaries don't appear to be well thought out. For example, Washington Street in Area 4, the properties between Washington and Berwick are very close proximity to the cafe retail strip, which I understand to be Albany Highway. I live there and walk to the cafe strip all the time, so their exclusion from the policy seems arbitrary. The more appropriate boundary would be Berwick Street, which is an arterial road, and not the more internal local road, Washington Street. So I kind of understand what they're saying, but I didn't see any reference in the report to anything like that having been taken on board. The officer's commentary says, with regards to the schedule of submissions, they were not of the view that the submissions led to any changes to the draft policy. But is that point in number 15 a well-made point, that an area that you can easily walk to would then actually make the case for possibly a further apart outer boundary limit? I'm just wondering about it because it's close to where I live, so I'm curious about it, Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. So the officers have clearly reviewed all of the submissions, made a judgment and had to have drawn the line somewhere. But happy to take that on notice and provide in the further considerations either a reconsideration or a justification as to why that didn't result in a change.
All right, thank you. Be happy to take that on notice. Anything further about policy 12.1? Councillor Ingram.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Through the chair. Just off the back of some of these questions, I've got a couple of clarifiers I was hoping I can ask directly. Otherwise, I'm happy to send them through by email. But the first one would be, what would be the potential implications if the town were to look to expand this policy to cover the entirety of the town? Because I'm obviously keenly aware of the state government changing things around Oates Street and Archer Street stations. Does that get caught up in the potential for these unhosted STRAs to be established there or anything?
Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Thanks for the question as well. The previous policy, the location requirements in the previous policy were so broad as to have covered virtually all of the town in the first instance. And so it was actually on advice from Welga and their draft policy, which local governments use as a starting point, to confine STRA with more strict locational requirements, especially around activity centres. Yeah.
And in particular, Councillor Ingram, around transport corridors, so public transport. So, for example, the Oak Street precinct, clearly it's a centre point. So I think under what we've got, pretty much everything around there within the radius would be covered as suitable. Have other questions?
Thank you for that clarification. If I may, there was also a reference made regarding the management plans to local proximity, but I couldn't find any definition, so I was hoping for some clarity on that.
Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I will take that one on notice. And also, if I can, just to add on to the question you asked before, I do note that the areas in the updated policy don't at this stage include train station precincts, but that is, again, is something that we can consider through the life of the policy and as things change when we undertake a review.
All right, thank you. But we will take the first part of that on notice for the question with regards to the management plans. Thank you. Anything further, Councillor Ingram?
No, thank you very much, Mayor Vernon.
Any final questions on 12.1? No? All right. Well, I think we'll be able to bring Councillor Biondi back in. She'll be thinking that we forgot all about her. I do like having fun with the buzzer. Let's hope she hears it. All right, so Councillor Biondi has returned to the chamber. We've completed our discussions on 12.1. Now moving on to 12.3, Hubert Street Outline of Engagement Outcomes. So in relation to this matter, oh, lo and behold, the questions come from me. So I'm going to go first, and then if there's anyone else who has questions, we'll go to that next. So the first one is paragraph 4 of the officer's recommendation refers to 133 participants. So I wanted to know, how did the Your Thoughts engagement reach 133 participants? Go to Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I'm going to, if it's okay with you, refer that to the Chief Financial Officer, who actually, through his role with parking, oversaw the engagement.
All right, thank you. Go to you, Mr. Pryor.
Thank you. So the way we count the participants through the Your Thoughts page is and it's good that we've got Ros as well in the, is through the clicks that are being accessed on the site. So again, they might have opened up these links but not necessarily completed out a survey. So that's why we've got a relatively a relatively high participation and a lower survey participant.
And I did have a question about the low participation in the pop-up engagement, especially in light of the number of people who contacted council and came to council meeting when this matter first came to council. Do you have any insights on how it is that we ended up with only 3 people who came to the drop-in sessions, Mr. Pryor?
As much to my disappointment as well, being there ready, no feedback has been provided in relation to the low attendance. The 3 that did attend had really good, meaningful discussions with a lot of staff. We, because of the caretaker period, our communication went out on the Tuesday the 21st, advising them of the drop-in sessions. There was multiple means of engagement, which was through the survey and emails. But yeah, the 3 that did arrive also did complete a survey.
Good. Obviously, when we talked about the reference to the 133 participants as part of the outcome of the community engagement, has the town sought to inform all of these people about the outcome and in particularly that this report is now coming to council? Mr. Pryor?
From my awareness, no communication has been provided as a follow-up update about the ABF tonight. However, what we will do is inform all participants with email addresses that the item will be presented to next OCM.
All right, thank you. And finally, in paragraph 6 of the officer's report, there's a number of next steps. What is the town's proposed timeframe for each of the next steps outlined in paragraph 6? Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Yes, so next step, and if I can refer all elected members to 2.6, because it'll help you understand my answer. Next step 1, or A in the report, we intend to be completed by February 2026. Next step B is dependent on the prioritisation within the integrated transport program, but but design likely to occur or could occur in Q1 26-27. C is the answer to that could be Q2 26-27, and then next step D would be Q3 and Q4 26-27 in the lead up to the annual and the preparations for the annual budget. But that will be considered. There's two things probably need to happen there. First of all, there will be a staff consideration of the prioritisation within the integrated transport program for Hubert Street. How important is it compared to other streets and projects? And then for that to be tested with council as well in prioritisation, and that testing could occur as part of the upcoming annual budget process as well.
Okay, thank you. I do have a couple of follow-up questions. Apologies for no advance notice of them, but they've occurred to me. The first one is, leaving aside the next steps, is there likely to be some further traffic monitoring that goes on Hubert Street in the coming, I'm going to call it 12 months, so let's just say 2026 as a calendar year. So I'll go to you, Mr. Pryor, on that first.
We, from the parking and rangers side of things, we've been monitoring through our occupancy data, and we've taken a sample right now to influence our discussions through design. We've seized that process, and now it's around just monitoring those on-demand needs for encroachment of driveways from a ranger's perspective to monitor that, but no additional monitoring at this stage.
Okay, that's probably my fault. I wasn't clear about that. I'm not actually talking about monitoring the on-site parking. I'm talking about actually monitoring the traffic flows on Hubert Street, because what I read in the report is a reference to the volume of traffic travelling down Hubert Street to get out at Miller Street's end and or go the other way and get out at Mint Street. So people have referred to the increased volume number of cars, which are, some people think are being slowed down by parked cars and others think it doesn't work too well. But it wasn't more about the parking occupancy assessment, it was more about the volume of traffic travelling on that street. Do you know, is there a plan to monitor that in 2026? Mr. Doy, happy for you to answer that.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I will take that on notice, but what I will say as a qualifier is that if any monitoring does take place while we would collect information around volumes, it is less important to us than speed. Speed will be speed. Oh, okay, that was the next question. I can telepathic link, but speed is the number one priority and the number one informer to a design response rather than congestion.
So thank you. You were ahead of me there. So my next question was going to be, given that we've now installed the Wombat crossing on Mint Street out the front of Hubert Street, is there likely in the 2026 calendar year to be any monitoring of speed on Hubert Street to see if that particular traffic calming measure has had any impact on the number of people both going down that street and the speed at which they're trying to travel down it? I'll go to Ms. Labicus for that.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Yes, absolutely. As part of the broader Carlisle traffic study, we should be including these elements so that we can learn from their effectiveness as we start to contemplate into the future. So yes.
All right, I will just clarify though with you, this wouldn't be part of the Carlisle Traffic Management Plan because Hubert Street's in East Victoria Park. So it's the other side. But that's okay. If we're doing it, we're doing it. I don't mind whose traffic management plan it's part of, so long as we're doing it. Good. All right, thank you. That was all I needed to follow up on. Any other questions now about 12.3 Hubert Street? Councillor Cruiser.
Just looking at the engagement results here, the engagement results show that retention of as many parking bays as possible and retention of parking space directly outside my house was highlighted as a key consideration for residents. When it comes to our integrated transport strategy and our other plans and strategies, do we have any hierarchy when it comes to, for example, balancing parking on the street against road safety or other planning considerations.
Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. We don't have specific guidance to that level of detail within the integrated transport strategy, but the integrated transport strategy certainly provides an indication of what's important, and provide, and as does the parking management plan, which forms a part or an appendices to the integrated transport strategy, and the amount of parking or providing more parking is not necessarily a priority. That being the case, though, on-street parking can have a positive impact on slowing speeds and providing a great outcome on the street as well. So it's something that the provision of on-street parking in the design is something that we would consider on a case-by-case basis. Yeah.
Thanks, Councillor Cruiser. Anyone else with questions about this particular item? Anyone? Councillor Ingram?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Through the chair, I just wanted to ask in regards to the submissions that have been received from the town, there appears to be a consistent reference to Miller Street and the congestion build-up around Shepperton Road. As part of this, could it be possible for the town staff to provide an update if there's any indication we'll be getting a right-hand turn signal at that particular intersection anytime soon?
You've hit on one of our favourite questions, Councillor Ingram. I don't know how many times that's come up in this hallowed chamber, the intersection of Miller Street and Shepperton Road. Ms Lubicus, one of our favourite projects that hasn't yet come to pass.
That intersection is currently on our capital project program. We've been working with Main Roads to finalise some final concerns with them. So once those concerns are fully resolved, then we'll be better positioned to provide more certain advice on that one.
Councillor Ingram.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Just another quick one that came up regarding the Wombat Crossing. I was just curious if the town has previously considered adding additional road markings ahead of that crest on the hill to make it more clear that the actual Wombat Crossing has been fully installed for those unfamiliar with the area.
Ms Lubicus, it's obviously an operations, project, but I would have thought there was probably some collaboration potentially with place planning over that. But if you're happy to answer it or even take it on notice.
Yeah, I will take that one on notice because usually the lines and signs are approved by Main Roads. So I'll go back and have a look and see what was approved and what the potential is.
All right, so we'll take that on notice. Anything further, Councillor Ingram?
No, thank you very much for that, and apologies if I've overstepped and dove into the operational side of things.
No, that's all right. Some of the questions that we ask inevitably do relate to operational matters, but sometimes they're informed by our strategies, our plans and our capital works program budget. So any other questions about Hubert Street from anyone? No? All right, on that basis we'll go on to 12.4, which is response to petition relating to traffic impact of approved childcare premises at number 184A Shepperton Road, East Victoria Park, otherwise known as Butler Lane. All right, so we do have some questions about this one. Deputy Mayor Miles.
I had a question about the traffic count, noting that obviously it's going to be the summer holidays shortly and schools will be not at school, or people will not be at school. Could you advise when the traffic count is likely to take place for this, please?
Going to refer that to Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. Thanks for the question. Also, if I trigger the coup with any of these answers, please signal to me, because I'm a town planner. But it isn't best practice to carry out traffic surveys during school term breaks when traffic volumes are typically lower. Traffic counts at this site will only be conducted within the school term period, likely to be February 2026, prior to any construction work commencing. This should be taken as a given rather than requiring an amendment to the recommendation.
Anything further, Deputy Mayor Miles? No? All right. I've submitted a number of questions to the town, but I have received notification that there's insufficient time to be able to answer them all, and town staff would wish to take them on notice. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to formally quickly read them. I'll read the 7 of the 8 questions since the 8th question has been answered, and then ask if they could be taken on notice. First question, regarding the traffic impact statement, when was the traffic data assessed? How many times were the traffic counted, and on which roads were the traffic counted taken place? Question number 2, paragraph 5 of the officer report. My first question, the traffic impact statement concluded no traffic will travel on Butler Lane because it will go via Carnarvon Street onto Miller Street, then into Butler Lane. Assuming that is correct, on what assumption was that conclusion based? B, did the traffic impact statement measure traffic volumes on Miller Street outside this development, and if so, what were the volumes for the peak hours, both in the morning and the afternoon? Part C to my question about paragraph 5 relates to point 2 of paragraph 5. Does the traffic impact statement estimated 144 movements per day into and out of Butler Lane only relate to people accessing or leaving the childcare? In other words, does it include other movements into and out of that laneway, such as local residents? If it is only those accessing or leaving the childcare, on what basis have they predicted there'll only be a 10% increase in vehicles per day on the adjacent Carnarvon Street? Paragraph 3, para 7, what is the town's estimate of when the intersection at Shepperton Miller will be upgraded? Oh, sassy question. 4, does the town consider that Butler Lane should be used as a thoroughfare for access and egress by vehicles accessing the childcare centre, and if so, why? Question 5, how long will it take to order and install a sign at the start of Butler Lane and at Boulder Street entry to Butler Lane, limiting access to the laneway to only local residents? 6, what is the cost of such signs? 7, what is the cost of blind spot mirrors as proposed by the petitioners? Those are my questions. I'd like to have those taken on notice, thank you. Are there any other questions in relation to this item? Councillor Cruiser.
Point 2 of the petition noted at paragraph 9, point 1 is a request that Butler Lane be labelled with signage saying that it is access for residents and resident deliveries only. Do we have any formal process by which residents can request that their street or lane become only for the use of residents and resident deliveries?
Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. We will take that on notice, but my understanding is it's probably on a case-by-case basis, and it would be assessed by the staff of the town in that manner.
What would the criteria be for us, or for the staff, assessing whether or not a public lane or road or street should become purely for residential use?
Mr. Doy.
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. I would be guessing we'll take that on notice, if that's okay.
All right, so we're taking both those questions on notice. Do you have anything further, Councillor Cruiser?
If it's possible, and I'm aware that it may be too arduous, is it possible for us to get some information about either the number of streets that have been labelled as purely for residential use, or perhaps just some recent examples of public streets that have been signed as being only for residents?
I think we'll definitely have to take that one on notice, but there are streets in the town that do have signs up, say local residents only. Of course, that doesn't always help when traffic decides they're going to go down that street anyway. It rather depends on whether the street ends up being a cul-de-sac or it's actually leading through to another location. But I'm imagining the town has a list of what those streets are that currently have that restriction on it signed. So we'll take that on notice. Anything further, Councillor Cruiser? No? Any other questions in relation to Butler Lane? Councillor Minson.
Thank you, Mayor. Might have been kind of part of your questions taken on notice, but just so for clarity, when we're talking about the sign, is the town envisioning the local traffic only sign, the white sign with the black writing on it? Is that what we're kind of discussing?
I think Councillor Minson, the purpose of my questions was about the petition. So the petitioners put some proper wording that they were looking for. They were looking for something that said that the laneway was to be for local residents and local resident deliveries only. So that's a little bigger than local residents only. But Mr. Doy?
Thanks, Mayor Vernon. That would be a matter for the technical experts to decide the appropriate sign.
And I think it is the case that there are rules about road signs, including those to go on public laneways. And so they're part of the Australian standards. So I know that we had some trouble years ago at the Burswood Peninsula where we wanted to put signs that the local community wanted, but they didn't meet the Australian standards about the right wording. So if the words local residents and local resident deliveries only is not within the Australian standards, we might not be able to accommodate that request anyway. But, you know, if something's for local residents, then I think those delivering to local residents might be legitimately able to fall within that potentially. So I hope that helps.
Thank you. Yep.
Any other questions about Butler Lane? No? All right, we're at 13.1, feasibility report to resurface the Kensington Bushland pathways. So, Councillor Anderson, you had some questions?
Yes, I have 2 questions, please. The report notes the pathways were last remediated after the 2016 fire and no further works have occurred since. Could administration confirm whether a formal ongoing maintenance schedule ever existed for these paths? And if not, whether one will be established to prevent similar deterioration after the proposed remediation.
Track that question to Ms Labickas.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. We cannot find a maintenance plan on record, so I dare say that there wasn't a formalised plan as part of that, the delivery of those works. But yes, once we make the paths more formalised and accessible, there needs to be a formalised maintenance plan. So that's from regular routine inspections to repairs to upkeep as well.
Thanks. Thank you. And my next question, what engagement is planned with the Friends of Jerderup Bushland Group regarding the remediation?
Ms Labickas?
Thank you, Mayor. We've actually flagged this question is before us at the moment, and we have we advise the Friends of Group of the need to do geotech investigations and that sort of stuff. So what we are envisaging that we'll actually develop up those concepts and decision making hand in hand with the Friends of.
All right, thank you. Next questions, Councillor Cruiser.
The agenda notes that for the limestone paths, annual inspection and maintenance is required. Is there any estimate of the cost of this?
Ms Labickas?
Thank you, Mayor. So currently we've got very active members of our eco team that actually are on site very, very regularly. So in terms of the regular inspections, my expectation is that they will be actually doing that when they're on site. So any early warning of any potholes or rutting or any of that stuff that would be emerging. So those inspections can be accommodated within the existing budget. It's just they're walking them right now. I guess if we do have major rain events that may cause washout or scouring, the estimate is depending on the length and that sort of stuff, the estimate is somewhere between $2,000 and $5,000 to do those localised repairs.
Do the staff recommend that operational funding for the inspection and maintenance of the path come from the existing funding for Jerderup or for the Kensington Bushland or as an additional cost?
Ms Labickas?
So as I've just outlined, in terms of the inspections, we think it can be accommodated. Where because of the profile of the existing path, we believe that it will be quite resilient through the method that's proposed. So it would only really be if there was needing to be, if there was an unplanned event that had scouring or washout, that we'd be seeking additional monies, and that wouldn't be year on year. It would be intermittent.
If we approve a recommendation for this to be funded in the 2026-2027 budget, would that then require a revocation for it to not appear in that budget, or might it be removed as part of the normal budgeting workshop process?
Ms Lebickas?
Sorry, I'm not quite understanding the question.
Do you want to just say that one again, Councillor Cruiser? We'll get there.
This may be more of a governance question than an operational question. My question is that if we do approve that this item be included in the 2026-2027 budget, does that then mean it would require a revocation if we wanted to change our mind about that? Or could changes be made as part of the budget workshop process with the budget to be finalised when we pass the final budget?
Going to refer that to well, I'm looking here. It's a little bit like a game of tennis. So it's either the Manager of Governance or the Acting CFO. Manager of Governance and Strategy, Ms Tucker.
Thank you for the question. In essence, with the future budget item, it can only be listed for consideration, so it can't be listed for actual approval. So when it comes through to that time for that budget process to be conducted, this item, if that's what Council wanted for consideration, would be discussed and then a determination made whether to progress or to change direction at that point in time.
So I think to follow up from Councillor Cruz's question then, at the moment the officer recommendation actually says the words that it's to go in the budget for 26-27, not to be listed for consideration in it. So does that mean, based on your advice, Ms Tucker, that we might need to fix that somewhat before the item comes to Council for December OCM?
Yes, thank you. That would be my recommendation. We can have a look at that.
All right, thank you. I'm going to go back to you, Councillor Cruiser. You said something I wasn't quite sure got covered off on or closed off on. You talked about if we then wanted to revoke our decision. I wasn't quite sure what you were meaning. Are you able to elaborate? Were you meaning we put it in now, but then we do the budget workshops and we change our mind because of other priorities or discussions? Is that what you were meaning?
The clarification of the wording addresses my question. I'm not familiar previously with us approving aspects of the budget prior to entering the budget process. So if we are instead including it for consideration in the budget, that addresses my question fully.
Good. Please just want to make sure that you've got the answer that you needed for your questions. Now, in relation to this one, are there any other questions from elected members about 13.1? Councillor Minson.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Just in terms of the relationship with the sandpit tender, it talks about some options now in the latest round of tender for, I think it's different portions and about different options for surface treatments, the red asphalt or the clay polymer, and then saying, oh, there's an opportunity to potentially match that, noting the recommendations is not to have limestone in the, not to continue with limestone in the Kensington portion of the bushland. Is it my reading that it's not possible to have limestone in the sandpit area, or it's not recommended to have limestone in the sandpit area? It's only between clay and red asphalt?
I'm glad you asked this, Councillor Minson, because it was on my list, because I remember a very long, exhaustive conversation of a previous council meeting about what the surface would be in the sandpit site. Ms Lebickas.
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. So my understanding that the options that were debated at some of the council deliberations over sandpit were between the asphalt and the polymer. I'm not clear as to whether or not limestone was originally was originally contemplated. What we have done in the last couple of weeks is to get some geotech done to assess the stability of the underlying ground, because the initial work showed that it was very difficult to get compaction, and the stability of the path was an issue. So I guess what we're wanting to do is to wait until we get the outcome of that geotech, and then assess what is best placed from a technical point of view. But certainly we can have a look and see whether or not that site would be a candidate for limestone.
Anything further, Councillor Minson?
Just to clarify that, so my reading of that report before us today is that we're out to tender with different options, portion 2 and 3, I think, of the tender, which says clay, polymer or red asphalt. So are you saying that concurrently we're doing geotech and we're not going to make a decision on the tender until that point where we have the geotech information, so that the tender's going to wait, and at that point we potentially even also have the option of not going ahead with the tender as is presented in the report and going to a limestone option?
Ms Lebickas?
Yeah, so originally we had anticipated that tender would actually be at this council meeting, and so what we wanted to do was to actually hold it back so that we could have this discussion and get the results of the geotech. And if we needed to, if the geotech indicated that the ground was suitable to do something similar as we're proposing in the Kensington Bushland, then we would hold that back and reassess.
Okay. And just a final question. So potentially we have limestone in the Kensington bushland area, and potentially geotech is favourable in the sandpit for limestone, and we make a recommendation that that would be nice to match it all up, and limestone is preferable. Although I guess the DDA compliance and the the widths and everything that we wanted to get out of the sandpit area, we other than just the geotech issue, we can still fulfil with limestone.
Ms Lebickas?
Yes, so the DDA compliance is that it needs to be firm, and it needs to have turning circles, and it needs to have a certain width. So yes, we can accommodate that in the sandpit.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Minson. So I do have a couple of questions, and some of them touch on what Councillor Minson has raised. But I do have a small point to start with, and that is whether or not point 4 of the officer's recommendation is actually even necessary given point 2 of the recommendation. So point 2 says approves the town to install a remediated limestone path in the bushland, and point 4 says approves the administration to seek a formal quotation for the installation of remediated limestone. If we give you approval in point 2, you don't really need us to give you any more approval to get a quote in point 4, I would have thought. Would that be a fair point, Ms Lebickas?
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. So my next question was to try and clarify, and I'm sorry that I was scrolling through past minutes of meetings trying to land on the one where we made our resolution about the Kent Street sandpit site. And my recollection is that one of our biggest difficulties and why we spent so much time debating it that night was that we didn't have an option for limestone. We had to choose between a form of road base that would be suitable to take emergency services vehicles, namely fire trucks, without them sinking into the sandpit. And that led us to the choice of either hard asphalt bitumen, which would look terrible in what will soon in the future be remediated bushland, or we would go the clay polymer that we have at the Hillview bushland, obviously being much wider than it is in the Hillview bushland. So are you able to say what is your understanding of the pathways treatment option that council has already resolved will be installed in the Kent Street sandpit site? Ms Lebickas.
The tender that we called for actually looked at both options, so that we could come back to council with with both options on the table.
Sorry. When you say both options, you mean asphalt or the the clay polymer,
Yes.
but not an option for limestone in the Kent Street sandpit site. Is that right?
That's right.
So, is it the case that we can't have the crushed limestone in the sandpit site to match what we are now being recommended to approve to be remediated in the bushland next door?
Yes.
Ms.
So the
Levikas?
geotech will give us that advice.
Right. Okay. So then you're not aware that we didn't do geotech before, is that right? To work this out?
My understanding is that the geotech before was ostensibly to locate the contamination. It wasn't at that finer grade that allowed us to assess the stability of the underlying ground across the path lines.
Okay, thank you. Paragraph 12, subparagraph 5 of the officer's report refers to additional site investigations that are required prior to the award of the contract for the Kent Street sandpit site. Are they the geotech reports that investigations you've just been talking about?
Yes, they are, Mayor.
Thanks, Ms. Levikas. Paragraph 20, I'm a little confused by this. It talks about the costs of the options. And I want to try and be clear about this. Is the cost of what is said to be the densifying limestone option $238,264 based on $92,000, which is identified and stated to be applicable to all options, plus the $146,264 identifiable for the limestone on its own? Ms. Levikas?
I will take that on notice. Thank you, Mayor.
All right, thank you. If we could take that on notice, because my follow-up question is, if that is correct, that you have to add the 92,000 that would apply to any of the options we choose, plus the 146 for the remediated limestone, you get an amount that is higher than the allocated cost request of 150. So I want to be clear that we know what it is we're trying to allocate for. So my second question then, if we can have that taken on a notice as well, because that relates to the recommendation itself. My next question is in three parts. It relates to paragraph 24 of the officer's report. Firstly, is it proposed that the company that is awarded the tender for the Kent Street sandpit site, potentially early in 2026, would also be given the contract to remediate the pathways inside the Kensington bushland? Ms. Levikas?
No, because we need to go through a competitive process.
All right, but I suppose it's possible they could tender for that work as well. All right, thank you. My second question, is there an option using the procurement process for the work to be carried out at the Kensington bushland at the same time as, and I don't mean to say right at exactly the same time, but as part of the same time footprint as we're doing the work at the Kent Street sandpit site? Because I feel like there might be some good synergy if it all sort of happened literally as though it was one project. Ms. Levikas?
That would absolutely be my preference, because the mobilisation costs and the site setup would be less. I guess the other thing that we are working our way through in terms of scheduling is that we need to make sure that this work is delivered in outside of high-risk bushfire season as well, because we don't want this work to inadvertently create a bushfire.
So my final question then is probably about what happens if the contract for remediating the Kensington bushland pathways is not ending up being given to the same company that gets the tender for the sandpit site. What impact would that likely have on the timing of the delivery of the remediation of the limestone pathways in the Kensington bushland? Is it likely to mean then there could be a delay between the work in the sandpit site and when work could start on the remediated pathways in the Kensington Bushland. Noting what you just said about the right fire season being when we do the works, and potentially also the different budget cycle, current budget versus future budget. Ms. Lipicus?
Yes, that would have to be a scheduling issue that we'd need to work our way through, because, yeah, it would. And if the desire is to have them done in a time that's close together, we then need to specify that in the tender package, that, you know, that it needs to be done within these time parameters.
All right. So that does lead me back then to the costing and the budget cycle. So if the Kent Street Sandpit site project tender comes to council in February 2026, and if it were to be approved by council, does that mean that that work could start then within the 2025-26 budget? Because if we're granting the tender in February next year, presumably the money is within the budget for it. That'd be right, Ms. Lipicus?
Yes, the budget is available for that.
All right, so then that does lead to the question, if we were to award the tender for the Kent Street Sandpit site in February 2026, do we have an option via mid-year budget review, this is a question for Mr. Acting CFO, to actually allocate money for the Kensington Bushland remediation of pathways to be done as in within the 25-26 financial year? Is that going to be possible, rather than having to wait until the 26-27 budget year to get it done?
We can consider these things through mid-year budget. However, there would need to be a trade-off made towards our current capital projects because we don't have a surplus budget at mid-year. It'd be a reallocation, so we would have a discussion and consider what projects may not be delivered because there might be a variety of reasons, and see if those funds can be reallocated.
Mr. Pryor, would it be an alternate option for us to look to our reserves to find some money in one of our reserves for something that might be anywhere between $150,000 and $240,000, as opposed to potentially trading off by getting rid of another project that was otherwise going to go ahead?
Could be a second consideration. Ideally, if we've got budget already allocated and there's reasons why that project can't go ahead, it would be worthwhile pursuing that. And if not, we can consider the reserve option.
All right, thank you. That's all of my questions about this item. Any others? Deputy Mayor Miles.
Firstly, can I just go back? So did I hear correctly that you were going to investigate, or it was going to be investigated, that whether we could do the limestone paths in the sandpit? Did I hear that right?
Yes, you did.
Yep.
Ms. Lipicus said that's right.
Yep. So then I have a question. My recollection from when we discussed it a long time ago was there was a reason with the limestone. It wasn't about the vehicle compaction, but it was about the fact that it's hard to source limestone without dieback, and as a result, my recollection was it was environmental reasons and the risk of putting dieback into the sandpit. So if we're going to look at limestone for the paths, can we, as well as the vehicle kind of impacts and being able to access the fire trucks, can we also look at the environmental considerations? Because that was my recollection, and I just wanted to be sure.
Deputy Mayor Miles, did you say limestone with dieback?
Yes.
As in Jarrah dieback?
Yes.
In limestone?
So the basic raw materials like gravel, sand, limestone, it's really hard to get dieback-free limestone, gravel, sand. The DBCA website has an article about it because it has to be sterilised. And so when you're importing large quantities, my understanding is that then you bring dieback onto a site. And I think, and I don't remember, but I feel like maybe because the geoduct parts were historical and they're already there, and so then putting more on the same thing was less of an issue. But again, it was like a year or more ago. But it would be good to kind of get some clarification around that.
All right, well, we probably might need to get some clarification about how that would work now with remediated limestone into the Kensington Bushland, if that's the issue. Ms. Lipicus, is that something you're familiar with?
That's not something I'm familiar with, and certainly hasn't come up in the conversations around the bushland. It has come up in relation to the composite materials for the clay polymer, however.
All right, so we take that on notice? We'll take that on notice, thanks. Any other questions with regards to this particular item? No? All right, in that case, we're moving on to 13.2, Rutland Avenue Advocacy and Project Update, December 2025. So questions for this? Councillor Cruiser.
Could I move a procedural motion that we take a short break?
Oh, sorry, you don't need to move a procedural motion. I hadn't realised that we'd hit the 8:30 mark, which is the normal time that if we've continued to sit for 2 hours, we'll have a short comfort break. But as this isn't a formal meeting of council, we don't need to move a motion at it. I'm very happy to say we'll have a short break. Is everyone comfortable with 10 minutes? All right, so we'll break for 10 minutes and we will be back at 8:41 p.m. Thank you, everyone. All right, everyone, we're back from our short break. We're up to item 13.2, which is Rutland Avenue Advocacy and Project Update, December 2025. I think I had gone to you, Councillor Cruiser, just before the break. You have some questions.
Thank you, yes. Could we please get more information about the increase in traffic along Gallipoli Street and other side roads during the one-way trial period carried out for Rutland Ave?
Ms Labicus, is that something we can look back on the former reports to council a couple of years ago where that data was available?
Yes, yes,
All
ma'am.
right. So I think we'll have to take that on notice, Councillor Cruiser, so that can be provided. But I think from memory, we're talking about 2023, I think, the one-way trial was held. So I think it's been some time since some data was available publicly, but I'm sure we'll be able to get that. Your next question?
The officer recommendation is that council endorses continued refinement of the revised two-way design as the preferred approach pending confirmation of service constraints and funding. Will this be done in-house or funded by drawing down further on the existing state grant for the project?
Ms Lubicas?
Given the complexity of the site, the intent is for those designs to be done by a consultant partner.
Do we have any indication of approximately how much that might cost?
Ms Lubicas?
Not at this stage.
Would it be possible for us to get a rough ballpark figure?
It might not be, depending on what the factors are. Ms Lubicas, is it possible at this stage?
I will take that on notice.
All right, we'll take that on notice.
Point 14 notes that advocacy has already occurred and the Minister's Office and DOT have confirmed no additional funding will be provided to progress with the option previously preferred by Council. This seems to be slightly at variance with what the CEO has previously said during the public participation time of the meeting. Is it possible for us to get a bit more information about where point 14 and the CEO's understanding of the funding situation sit?
Mr CEO?
Thank you, Councillor, for the question. As you are aware, there have been some recent discussions, but I'm not at liberty to confirm all of the information in those discussions because they are ongoing, but certainly our advocacy continues for a two-way option.
It is the case, Councillor Cruiser, that I understood the CEO to say in answer to the question earlier from public participation time that he had attended a meeting with the Director General of the Department of Transport and that he understood that, that their continuing discussions were productive. So that indicated that there was still interest, notwithstanding this is an officer's technical report, not the report of the CEO who went to that meeting very recently, as referred to in the report. Your next question?
Point 1 notes that the design would continue pending confirmation of service constraints and funding. And it seems like in order to draw down further on that WABN grant, we would need to get permission from the WABN. Is that correct?
Ms Lubicas?
Thank you, Mayor. Yes, that is correct. So because it is fully external funded, before we expend funds, we actually do confer with Department of Transport.
Assuming that Council approves further design of the current preferred two-way grade separated approach, but the WABN does not approve further use of our grant funding to work on that design, what would the consequences be?
Ms Lubicas? You're welcome to take that on notice.
I will take that on notice, thank you.
All right, we'll make sure that's taken on notice. Do you have another question, Councillor Cruiser? All right, are there any other questions about this particular item? Councillor Minson?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. I'm looking to understand the intent of a couple of the points in the recommendation, just so it's clear to me. So with the point 2 of the recommendation that we're endorsing the continuation of design on the value engineered two-way design, which is the option 3 in the presented in the reporting as the preferred option, obviously pending a few assumptions. And then with point 4, that we're acknowledging that that option has the reduced widths on the PSP, and there's some compromises there for the long-term network outcomes. The next bit of point 4, when we say that the cost benefits must be considered alongside advocacy for the full primary route delivery, is that meant to mean that in our continued advocacy for potentially this value engineered option, that we would be saying to the Department of Transport, look, this is our preferred option now, it meets all the council's requirements and is a bit more aligned on cost, but you need to be aware that the cost difference that you're going to save here between the option 1 is coming at the cost of the reduced PSP width.
Ms. Lebickas?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Yes, that's correct.
Okay, right. Thank you.
All right, thanks, Councillor Minson. Any other questions about this? I do have some questions about point 6 of the officer recommendation, this with regards to the traffic calming with the implementation of wombat crossings at each of the 3 locations. So my questions with this probably start with the existing resolution of council that was made in December last year, the resolution being to install Watts profile speed humps on Rutland Avenue as soon as possible, and that was subject to provision in the resolution of council for some community engagement with those living on Rutland Avenue and in and around it, with a report back to council at the beginning of this year, which I recall did occur. And out of that came as I understand it, a refinement of the number of speed humps to be installed that were less than what had been originally contemplated in the December 2024 motion and resolution. But now it appears that it's not Watts profile, which was, according to the previous resolution, costed in at $70,000 for however many Watts profile speed humps it was, and now it's 3 wombat crossings. So I'm wanting to try and make sure I understand that. Do we have an issue with the fact that there's a prior council resolution to do one thing and we're now moving towards something completely different? Or are the officers of the view that there's been some resolution in the meantime in 2025 that has already changed the resolution of December 2024 to install the Watts profile? Ms. Lebickas?
I will take that on notice in terms of the officer's understanding.
All right, thank you. If we can take that on notice, that would be good, because I'd like us to be really clear about the pathway to the 3 wombat crossings. So my next question is, in relation to the 3 wombat crossings that are proposed to be constructed immediately if council is to resolve in accordance with this recommendation, what is the budget for that work? Because when I looked back at the minutes of the meeting from December 2024, where wombat crossings were costed, they were costed at $25,000 per wombat crossing, as opposed to the Watts profile at a few $1,000s a speed hump. Ms. Lebickas?
I will throw that across to Mr. Doy.
Mr. Doy, are you able to help with that?
I can partially help with that, Mayor Vernon. What I can say is that to get the exact costs of the Wombat crossings, that will need to be taken on notice provided in the further considerations. It's not directly answering your questions, but the funding for the Wombat crossing can be accommodated with the contribution from main roads through the low cost urban road safety program. That's the intent, is to be able to fund those Wombat crossings outside of a municipal contribution, but the exact costing of the Wombat crossing will need to take on notice.
All right, well, if we could take it on notice, and as part of that, if we could also include the source of the funding. So if you have worked out what the budget for that work would be, when you refer to the low-cost road infrastructure program from main roads, be good to know and understand, is that something we'll have to design for, then apply for and get approval before we can install, or are we in a position, like the process for that, because I think to date Council's experience of that has been the so-called mini roundabouts project, and it's been quite a long process to come to Council to approve those things. So if that could be understood as part of the further consideration to that question, I'd appreciate it. My next question is if these 3 Wombat crossings in this area are to be constructed immediately, will they have to be subsequently removed from Rutland Avenue when the full PSP project goes ahead, as it is Council's intention that it ultimately does? Ms Labicus?
No, Mayor. The intent is for them to be constructed and remain in place.
All right, thank you. Are there any other questions arising about this? Councillor Cruiser?
Looking at our town documents, Watts profile speed humps and Wombat crossings look very, very similar to me. Is it possible to get an explanation of what the difference is between the two?
Ms Labicus?
Certainly. So the Watts profile are more like the removable ones that you see. So they actually are, the user experience is very different from the Wombat that are more like a platform kind of approach. So it's the way that they manage the speed.
So just to be clear then, Ms Labicus, so the Wombat ones are more like a raised plateau that extends over a distance, whereas your Watts profile is effectively a half moon shaped bitumen thing that is just a little nicer than a rubber speed hump. That's that about right?
That's correct.
Okay, good. Anything further, Councillor Cruiser?
Given that one of the considerations for Rutland Ave is to ensure a safe connection across the missing section of the PSP, the Wombat crossings are great for pedestrian safety. Could you tell us a little bit more about the impact of cyclists who might be using that missing stretch of path and going onto the road for it?
So from a road user point of view, the Wombat crossings certainly do give a smoother experience. So it's less violent. So you can actually the way that the Watts profiles, typically the speed drops to 20 kilometres an hour, and then sort of people tend to take off in between, where the Wombats are much smoother. So from a cyclist point of view, it's much easier to navigate.
Is that everything, Councillor Cruiser? Yes, thank you. All right. Oh, there was something that brought me in mind of, but oh yes. Question. This might be for both Mr. Doy and Ms. Labicus. What is the process for the town to apply to main roads for a spot speed reduction on that stretch of Rutland Avenue down to 40 kilometres an hour, whether on a temporary basis or on a permanent basis, notwithstanding our entire local roads 40 kilometres safer speed project, but this would be something more right now, because I understand it can be done. Councils can seek to have a stretch of a road redesignated, just as we did with Albany Highway. So be grateful to hear from someone. What's that process like And is that an option for this part of Rutland Avenue to assist with reduction of speed to answer community concerns about safety on that road? Ms Labicus.
So typically there's updated speed counts, there's vehicle profiles, there's all of those sorts of traffic surveys, and then we write to Main Roads and put our case forward, and they'll make a determination as to whether they support it or not.
And would we be in a position to use the traffic vehicle speeds and counts that we've already collected reasonably exhaustively over the last couple of years in the lead up to now? Or would we have to do it all again? Ms Labicus?
We could use our historical data. It's probably an advisable strategy to actually deploy some traffic counters out in the feeder streets as well as Rutland for a couple of weeks, just to ensure that what we've got is still characteristic of what we're seeing.
All right, thank you. Do either of yourself or Mr Doy have any clue about how long it normally takes for such a, shall we call it, proposal or submission to Main Roads to be dealt with?
I don't. I'm sorry.
Mr Doy? No? All right. Could we ask for the town to inquire about what might be the likely estimated time for such a opportunity? Thank you. So we could ask for that to be taken on notice. Thanks. That's all my questions about this item. Any other questions around Rutland Avenue? Nope. All right, so that brings us to the end of the items from the agenda that we had indicated that there would be questions in relation to from the officer reports. Item 15 is committee reports. There are none. 16, motion of which previous notice has been given. There's none. Item 17 is public participation time, which I now reopen at 9 p.m, but noticing that the last members of the public just decamped the public gallery. There being no members of the public in the public gallery, I'll close public participation time at 9 p.m. Item 18, questions from elected members without notice on general matters. Does anyone have any questions on general matters they would like to ask? I've got one. The small space of public land next to John Bissett Reserve that has been used for the Metronet laydown on the corner of Miller Street and Beatty Avenue. I submitted some questions to the town possibly more than a month or so ago to find out what was happening with that, since the site appeared to be in the process of being cleaned up. I've recently noted that there's still a fence around it. There appears to be nothing in the site anymore. It appears to have all been, I guess you could say, levelled, but basically it's gravel. Do we have any idea when the remediation works are going to start that Metronet agreed to undertake as part of our deal for letting them use that as a laydown site? Any takers? Ms Labicus.
I do not have visibility of the time frame. However, we are still in regular contact, working through defects and other things, so we'll raise it at the next project meeting.
All right, thank you. Any other questions from elected members on general matters without notice? Oh. Come on, everyone. It's just I am disappointed. So I'll ask another question. We're getting to the end of our 2-week rollout of phase 2 of FOGO. Ms Labicus, how's it going, given that today I saw lots of lovely FOGO bins and kitchen caddies all out at the end of people's driveways as I drove around? How are we going with the rollout of phase 2, please?
Thank you, Mel. I actually got an update on that before I came in. So we are approximately 70% through our rollout, and we believe that the initial deliveries will be complete as scheduled. So we're hoping that they're all on track, all will be delivered before the end of the weekend. We are aware that there are lots of CRMs and lots of calls and lots of people who are not putting their caddies away and putting their bins away, and we're at the moment sorting through the people that think they can opt out from the program from their data errors, so we're trying to work through that at the moment.
All right, thank you. Are you aware, is the town doing any active communications to the community through, say, social media channels to let people know, especially in this window, that it's not a matter of, if you don't want it, just leave it lying out on the side of the verge or the road? We want people to be a bit more responsible than that, because I haven't seen anything really recently about that. Ms. Labicus?
Mayor, at this stage, we're not going into the opt-in or opt-out. We wanted to see how the data was performing because we knew that last time we had a lot of issues with that, but we are preparing FAQs and other things for the community when they ring in.
All right, thank you. Any other questions without notice? Deputy Mayor Miles?
Following on from that question, is part of the rollout, maybe it's been stated, but so a lot of the people who don't have the light green lidded bin don't have a red lid on their bin. So is that, what's the status with that?
Ms. Labicus?
Yes. So we'll complete the rollout and then we'll move through and change the colour of the lids.
All right. Last chance. Going, gone. Any other questions from elected members without notice? Councillor Ingram?
Thank you, Mayor Vernon. Given FOGO raised its head unexpectedly, are there any current data available at this point in the Phase 2 rollout regarding the contamination levels of what has been provided?
Ms. Labicus?
Thank you. I actually put that in the paper for the Strategic Waste Management Plan forum this coming up. So we're sitting at about 5% contamination at the moment.
Anything further, Councillor Ingram?
No, thank you.
All right, thank you. Ms. Labicus, following on from that, based on what you know about rollouts of FOGO here, there and everywhere, it's 5% contamination rate at this early stage of a FOGO adopter starting in August, considered to be pretty good, average, pretty below average or bad? Ms. Labicus?
According to Libby at WMRC, it's about average.
Good, thank you. Any other questions? No? All right, item 19 is confidential matters. There are none. And so at 9:05 p.m, I declare the agenda briefing forum is closed. Thank you everyone for your participation tonight. Those who joined us on live streaming, thank you. Good evening. We are adjourned. Thank you.